The moment, everything shattered. They said it was an honor no man could ever lose. A sacred symbol, earned in blood, sacrifice, and the unwavering courage to face death itself. And yet, a decorated war veteran, hailed as a hero by his brothers in arms, stood frozen in a silent courtroom as a federal judge ordered him to remove it from his chest. The Medal of Honor. Gone. The room didn't gasp. It didn't erupt. It just went quiet. The kind of quiet you hear when something so wrong, so unthinkable, has just happened that nobody knows what to say. He didn't speak either, because in that moment, every word in his throat felt like glass. Years of service, countless nights in enemy territory, the memory of holding a dying friend's hand as the sun set on a battlefield thousands of miles away. All of it, reduced to a single command from the bench. Remove it. What followed was not just the loss of a medal. It was the dismantling of a man's life, piece by piece. A campaign to destroy his name, erase his record, and turn a national hero into a public disgrace. But here's what they didn't expect. When you strip a man of everything, rank, honor, recognition, sometimes you awaken something far more dangerous. This is his story. And trust me, you won't forget it. Before we go any further, I want to know something from you. Tell me in the comments right now, where in the world are you watching this from? Because the truth is, no matter where you are, the idea of having your entire life's worth stripped away in a single moment, that fear is universal. And maybe, just maybe, by the time we're done here, you'll see that courage isn't always about the battles we fight overseas. Sometimes, the greatest battles are fought here, at home, when the world turns against you. Introduction. The man before the fall beginning. Before the scandal, before the headlines, before the courtroom. He was simply known as Captain Aaron Mitchell. A soldier's soldier. Disciplined. Relentless. Respected. From the deserts of Kandahar to the dense jungles of Mindanao, he had earned the kind of reputation you can't buy or fake. He wasn't the loudest man in the room, but when he spoke, everyone listened. And when the bullets were flying, he was always at the front. Not because he wanted the glory, he hated it, actually, but because he refused to ask any man to take a risk he wouldn't take himself. This was the man who, in the dead of night during an operation gone wrong, carried 2 wounded soldiers across open ground under enemy fire. That night would change everything, but not in the way anyone expected. Introduction. The man before the fall continued. The rescue in that dark field didn't just earn him the Medal of Honor. It etched his name into the living memory of every man who served alongside him. The story was told in mess halls, passed quietly between new recruits like a sacred tale of what it meant to be a soldier. But Aaron never told it himself. If someone asked, he'd shrug, change the subject, or say, "I was just doing my job." That humility was part of his strength. But in the years to come, it would become part of his undoing. Because when you refuse to tell your own story, someone else will tell it for you. After that fateful mission, Aaron's career entered a quiet rhythm. Training missions, overseas deployments, strategy meetings. He wasn't chasing rank or political favor. He cared about the men on the ground, not the people in suits. But in the shadowed hallways of military politics, that made him a problem. The kind of soldier you can't control is the kind some people want gone. Years later, when a controversial operation in Eastern Europe went catastrophically wrong, Aaron's name surfaced in an internal investigation, not as a suspect, but as a scapegoat. At first, he thought it was a mistake. Then the calls stopped. The friends who once stood beside him vanished, and a sealed legal order arrived, summoning him to a hearing he didn't understand. In that sterile courtroom, the medal on his chest became the centerpiece of an argument he didn't even know was happening. Lawyers spoke of conduct unbecoming moral obligation and loss of integrity. The truth was never spoken aloud. Someone high up needed a symbol, and Aaron was perfect, visible enough to make headlines, but alone enough to crush without resistance. When the judge gave the order to remove the medal, Aaron's mind didn't go to anger. It went to disbelief. Disbelief that everything he had bled for could be rewritten in the stroke of a pen. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. They captured the moment he stepped into the light without the medal. No one saw the way his fists clenched behind his back, or how his jaw trembled, not from fear, but from holding back the words that could burn the whole place down. And somewhere deep inside, a decision began to form. They could take the medal. They could take his career. But they couldn't take the truth. And if no one else was going to fight for it, he would. Development. The silent war begins. Aaron didn't sleep that night. The hotel room the court had put him in was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't let you rest. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty space in his duffel bag where the medal used to be. It wasn't about the ribbon or the medal. It was about what it represented. Every drop of sweat, every scar, every friend he'd buried. They wanted to erase all of that. By morning, his phone buzzed with a message from an old friend, one of the few who still dared to talk to him. It was just an address and 3 words. Not safe here. Aaron didn't ask questions. He packed his bag, left through the service exit, and followed the coordinates to a rundown diner 2 towns over. Inside, at the farthest booth, sat Marcus Hale, his old communications officer from the mission that earned him the medal. Marcus looked older, harder. There was no small talk. "You're being set up?" Marcus said, sliding a thin envelope across the table. Inside were photocopies of internal memos, emails between high-ranking officials. Phrases jumped out at him. "Need a public example. Control the narrative. Asset Quinn unstable." Aaron's stomach tightened. Quinn was his call sign. Marcus leaned in. "It's bigger than you think. That Eastern Europe op? The one they blamed you for? It wasn't just a failure. Someone wanted it to fail." Aaron frowned. "Why?" Marcus shook his head. "Can't say here. Too many ears. But I know this. If you dig, they'll come for you harder than they already have." Aaron sat back, thinking. He had 2 choices: walk away and vanish, or go straight into the fire. And Aaron had never been the kind of man to walk away. Over the next few weeks, he lived like a shadow. Cheap motels, pay-as-you-go phones, no digital footprint. But everywhere he went, he pieced together fragments. Offhand comments from old contacts, scraps of declassified reports, whispers from veterans who knew things they weren't supposed to. It all pointed to the same thing. The failure in Eastern Europe had been orchestrated. The chaos it created allowed a private defense contractor to secure multi-billion-dollar reconstruction and security contracts. And Aaron's tarnished name was the smokescreen that kept the public from asking the right questions. The deeper he dug, the clearer it became. If he wanted justice, he couldn't rely on the system. The system was the enemy. So he built his own plan. First, he tracked down 3 surviving members of the Eastern Europe mission who had gone off the grid. It took months, but when they finally met, their stories matched his suspicions. Communications had been deliberately jammed. Support had been pulled at the last minute. Orders had been altered in transmission. Second, he started documenting everything. Dates, names, evidence. But instead of hoarding it, he duplicated it, sending encrypted copies to multiple trusted sources around the country. If they silenced him, the truth would still get out. By the time winter came, Aaron had the makings of a case that could bring down more than just the people who stole his medal. It could dismantle the network that had manipulated wars for profit. And that's when the threats started. Anonymous calls, black SUVs idling outside his motel, a break-in where nothing was stolen except his notes. Aaron knew it was time. He couldn't hide forever. He had to go on the offensive. Development, turning the hunt around. Aaron had been on the defensive for too long. Now, he would force them to react. He started by going back to the source. Records from the Eastern Europe mission stored deep within military archives. Officially, he had no access. Unofficially, he still knew people in the right rooms. A retired logistics officer named Daniels owed him a favor. They met in an abandoned hangar at night, the wind rattling the corrugated walls. Daniels slid a worn-out hard drive across a crate. "No one saw me give you this," he said. Aaron plugged it into his secure laptop later that night and felt his chest tighten. There it was. Raw mission logs, unedited, time-stamped, and proof that orders were altered mid-operation. Not only that, but the original commands had been erased from the official network hours after the mission went south. Someone had rewritten history in real time. Armed with this, Aaron moved to the next step, confronting people who had the most to lose if the truth got out. He started small, local political aides tied to the defense contractor. He didn't threaten them. He didn't have to. Just showing them a fragment of the truth made them pale and start talking. From those conversations came a name he hadn't heard in years, Brantley Shaw. Former colonel, now an executive at Virex Dynamics, the contractor that had made billions after the Eastern Europe disaster. Aaron's pulse quickened. Shaw had been in the command chain during the mission. If anyone had signed off on the altered orders, it was him. Finding Shaw wasn't difficult. Virex Dynamics liked to flaunt their heroes-turned-executives. The challenge was getting close without alerting corporate security. Aaron bought a second-hand suit, shaved his beard, and walked into a defense industry networking gala under a fake name. Shaw was there, smiling for photos, shaking hands. It took 2 hours for Aaron to maneuver close enough without drawing suspicion. When he finally spoke, it was in a calm, almost friendly tone. "Colonel Shaw, or do you prefer sir now?" Shaw froze for a fraction of a second before composing himself. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" Aaron smiled faintly. "You knew me well enough to rewrite my orders. You knew me well enough to take my men's lives for a payout." Shaw's smile didn't falter, but his eyes darkened. "Careful, son. You're speaking dangerous words." Aaron leaned in. "No, Shaw. I'm speaking the truth. And I have the proof." Security moved in, but Aaron was already slipping a small flash drive into Shaw's breast pocket. "Check it before you sleep," Aaron whispered. "Decide if you want to be the fall guy or the man who finally does the right thing." He walked away before anyone could stop him. 2 nights later, an anonymous package arrived at Aaron's motel. Inside, internal Virex Dynamics reports, emails, and contracts, directly implicating Shaw and others in orchestrating the mission's failure. The material was explosive, but also dangerous. If it got out too early, they'd know it came for Shaw. Aaron needed one more move, a public stage where the truth couldn't be buried quietly. He thought about Congress, the press, even whistleblower platforms, but each carried risks. Then he remembered something Marcus had told him. If you want the world to listen, you don't whisper to it. You make it impossible to ignore. Aaron began planning something bold. An information drop during a live, globally televised security summit where Virex executives and government officials would be present. It was dangerous. It was reckless. And it was exactly the kind of move they would never see coming. Aaron's plan was not flawless. It couldn't be. When you were fighting an entire system, you were always several steps behind. But he knew something the system didn't. The truth was already moving faster than they could contain it. In the weeks after the legal battle, Aaron quietly began reaching out to investigative journalists, carefully choosing those with a history of exposing corruption, even at personal risk. He didn't send them the full story right away. Instead, he gave them fragments, documents, testimonies, old mission logs. Just enough to raise questions. Just enough to make someone dig. By the time the military court prepared its final statement, multiple newsrooms were already calling for transparency. Pressure was building. One night, while Aaron was home alone, his phone buzzed. A withheld number. He hesitated, then answered. "Mr. Cole," the voice said, cold and precise. "You have something that belongs to us. Return it, or the next chapter in your story will be written without your consent." The call ended before Aaron could respond. He sat there in silence, knowing the game had changed. This was no longer about a medal. This was about survival. The following day, an envelope appeared under his door. Inside was a photograph, grainy, black and white, of him and 2 other soldiers in a desert war zone. On the back, in handwritten ink, they know. Instead of fear, something else took root in Aaron: defiance. They could strip his honor on paper, but they could not erase the truth. Aaron doubled down. He worked with the journalists to piece together a full expose. Names, dates, classified operations, every detail verified. The deeper they dug, the more they found. Secret missions gone wrong, innocent casualties buried in false reports, promotions handed out for silence. It took months, but the story was finally ready. On a rainy Monday morning, it went live on multiple major networks at once. The headline: Medal of Honor Scandal. The truth behind the stripped valor. The reaction was explosive. Veterans wrote letters of support. Whistleblowers came forward from other branches. Public outrage forced the government to open an independent inquiry. Aaron wasn't safe. He knew retaliation could come at any moment. But for the first time in years, he felt at peace. He had done what so few dared to do: stand against the machinery of silence. And he wasn't finished yet. The weeks following the expose were a blur of interviews, hearings, and relentless media attention. Aaron's face, once unknown to the public, was now on every news channel and website. Some hailed him as a hero. Others, influenced by the system he had challenged, painted him as a traitor. But Aaron didn't care about the noise. He cared about the letters that arrived daily, handwritten notes from veterans, widows, and even young recruits who said his courage had given them a reason to believe in honor again. The independent inquiry dragged on for months, unearthing truths that validated every word Aaron had fought to bring to light. Several high-ranking officials quietly resigned. Others faced trial. The military code regarding Medal of Honor revocations was reviewed for the first time in decades. One evening, Aaron walked alone along a quiet pier. The sun was setting, the water calm. He carried no medal on his chest, no uniform on his back. But there was a weight in his pocket, a folded letter from a soldier's widow that simply read, "Because of you, my husband's story is finally being told. Thank you." He stared at the horizon, feeling the ache of everything he had lost and the quiet pride of knowing he had done the right thing. In that moment, he understood something profound. Medals tarnish, careers end, reputations fade, but truth endures. To everyone watching this, Aaron's journey is more than a headline. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest battles are fought far from the battlefield. They are fought in courtrooms, in the press, and in the hearts of those who refuse to be silent. If Aaron's story moved you, take a moment right now to comment below where in the world you are watching from and what part of his fight resonated with you the most. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that integrity still has a place in this world. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel. Every week, we bring you untold stories of courage, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of truth. Because heroes aren't just the ones who wear medals. They're also the ones who never stop fighting for what's right, no matter the cost.